As we get closer to 2026, it feels like the demands on our time and our focus are just going to get crazier. But what if the real secret to getting ahead isn't about making these massive, dramatic changes? In this explainer, we're going to break down 6 tiny psychology-backed habits that are all about boosting your mental efficiency and, honestly, speeding up your progress. But first, let's talk about a feeling I'm pretty sure you've had. Have you ever set a huge, ambitious goal and you push with everything you've got, only to feel like you're just stuck? Like you're not going anywhere? It's this super frustrating paradox, right? The harder you try to force something, the more resistance you feel, sometimes from your own self. Well, it turns out there is a really simple psychological reason for that. Your brain, at its core, is a survival machine. It's built for efficiency and safety. So when you throw a giant, intimidating goal at it, its natural reaction is to just shut down. It gets overwhelmed. It's basically a defense mechanism kicking in. Okay, so if these giant leaps don't work, what's the alternative? This brings us to a much smarter and way more brain-friendly approach. Let's dive into what I call the 1% solution, which is all about a concept known as the Kaizen protocol. Now, Kaizen protocol might sound a little complex, but the idea is beautifully simple. It's the art of making continuous tiny improvements. So instead of saying, I'm going to write a whole book, you commit to writing just one paragraph. That's it. It's all about these small, manageable steps that build some serious momentum over time. And the magic number here is just 1%. Seriously, that's it. The entire philosophy boils down to this one question. Can you get just 1% better today? It's a goal so small that your brain doesn't even see it as a threat. There's nothing to resist. And here's the cool neuroscience behind why this works so incredibly well. Look at the two sides here. Big goals, they trigger overwhelm, shutdown, and resistance. But aiming for just 1% better, that actually engages our brain. Each tiny win gives us a little hit of dopamine. That's the brain's reward chemical, which makes you want to do it again, building consistency almost on autopilot. So how do we actually put this into practice? Let's get into the first 3 habits. These are all about mastering your inner world, really building that internal foundation you need for this kind of lasting progress. All right, habit number 1 is all about mastering the mental gap. This is really about what psychologists call cognitive inhibition, which is just a fancy way of saying you can override your gut reactions. So when you feel a strong emotion or an impulse coming on, the goal isn't to ignore it. Step 1, you just acknowledge it. Okay, I'm feeling angry. Then, and this is the critical part, step 2, you pause. You just create a tiny bit of space between that feeling and whatever you do next. That little gap, that's where you get to choose to act with logic instead of just being dragged along by your impulse. Okay, next up is habit number 2, and honestly, this one might surprise you. It's to practice selective organization. Yeah, this totally goes against that popular idea that you have to have everything in your life perfectly organized. The most efficient and intelligent minds, they don't do that. As you see here, they actually ignore the surface-level chaos, like a messy desk or an overflowing inbox, so they can pour all of their mental energy into their deep, important goals. It's about consciously choosing what really, truly matters and just letting the other stuff go. Habit 3 is developing something called interoceptive awareness. It's a big word for a really simple idea. It's the skill of listening to your body's internal signals. Your energy levels, your stress, your fatigue. By actually tuning in to what your body is telling you, you can learn to stop before you hit burnout. And that is the absolute key to having stable energy for the long haul. Okay, so we've been working on our inner world. And once you start paying attention to those internal signals, you're naturally going to want to shape your external world to support that. So that brings us to controlling your outer world. Habit 4 is all about environmental decluttering. I mean, just look at the contrast on the screen. A cluttered space full of physical noise and distractions, that creates a high cortisol, high stress environment. It just overloads your brain. But a clear, open space, it literally gives your brain breathing room. It lowers your stress and makes it so much easier to focus on what you actually need to do. And a clear environment usually leads to clearer thinking, which brings us perfectly to our 5th habit, observation before action. In a world that is obsessed with quick reactions and hot takes, this is a legitimate superpower. It's about choosing to be an observer first before you jump in. So why is this so powerful? Well, for one, observing first ensures that when you do respond, you're responding with clarity, not just raw emotion. You avoid just adding to all the noise out there, and at the end of the day, you just make way better, more thoughtful decisions. So let's bring this all together. When you start doing these things, you realize the core message here is about reframing what progress even looks like. This isn't about being slow. It's about having a huge efficiency advantage that most people miss. I really want you to let this sink in for a moment. If you're the kind of person who prefers these quiet, steady improvements over big, loud announcements and dramatic changes, you aren't slow. You are mentally efficient. You're conserving your energy and putting it exactly where it's going to have the biggest impact. Think about it this way. What you're actually doing with all these tiny habits is building a deep, stable foundation of consistency and self-awareness. It's a structure that can support massive growth down the line, a foundation that most people who are always chasing that next quick fix will simply never have. So let's end with this question, right here, right now. This whole idea is about taking action, no matter how small it seems. So forget about next week or even tomorrow. What is the very first 1% improvement that you're going to make today?